Welcome to the Infinite and Beyond, the MIT Alumni Show. I'm your trusted host, Rob Kalwarowsky, MIT Class of 2010, world-renowned executive coach, author, and speaker. Each week, we are sharing the stories with our friends and classmates, fellow MIT alumni who've taken action to shape the world. We'll share what we've learned, top strategies, and bring our community together to help everyone achieve our goals. No, this show is not officially affiliated with MIT, so any views expressed on this show are of the host and guest only. This show is designed to build a community that trusts, connects, and shares with each other so we can all take action towards a better world. Let's get rolling. Welcome to the MIT Alumni Show, the Infinite and Beyond. And of course, we have another special guest with us. Another MIT 2010, Alex Beyer is with us. She's the co-founder at Sourcerie. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Rob. How are you?
I'm great, and really thanks for joining us. And for folks out there, if you want to check out Sourcerie, it's not spelt like the witches. It's Sourcerie, and you can find their website, sourcerie.co. Now, Alex, before we jump into the nuts and bolts, can you tell us a little bit about Sourcerie and where do people find you and who would want to buy your stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so Sourcerie is a B2B SaaS platform. We provide a software platform that is really a centralized customer feedback and analytics product for Shopify powered e-commerce brands. So we help brands across lots of different industries, but in particular, spaces like FMCG, wellness, home, etc., to understand, interpret, analyze their own consumer feedback, and then to make business decisions off the back of that, whether those be marketing decisions or product development decisions, strategic roadmap decisions, etc. So yeah, you can find us, as you said, at sourcerie.co or sourcerie.ai. And obviously on LinkedIn as well. So definitely have a look, and it'll be one of my asks later. But if you are at a brand that sounds like this could be helpful, or if you know any brands that sound like this could be helpful, please do reach out. I'd love to connect.
Yeah, and for folks out there, just a little bit more, right, is they're using AI to read through the customer feedback or the reviews. And so distilling
Yeah.
that into real information. Please tell us more.
Exactly. Yeah. So most brands are sitting on kind of a gold mine of data in the form of feedback from their consumers or potential consumers. This data is typically in qualitative free text form. So things like product reviews on their own site, product reviews on third-party sites like the retailers they might sell on or on Amazon, as well as their own customer service messages or surveys that they're sending out. So they have a lot of this data. It's not for lack of having the information, but with such a dearth of this information and it all being qualitative free text, it's really difficult to quantify it and to make sense of it. And that's where we come in. So we use AI to, yes, essentially read across all of that customer feedback, categorize it and classify it into particular topics or trends that are being discussed across that customer feedback, and also run sentiment analysis across it so that a brand can see things like customers really love the packaging of this product, but they think it's a little bit expensive. And quantifying that data makes it possible for brands to be able to actually take action and understand the proportionality of these trends that they're seeing across their feedback, whether they're relevant, which things to focus on and prioritize, and therefore what kind of business outcome or ROI they can expect off the back of actioning those things.
I wish I had this probably about 10 to 12 years ago, because I was working as a reliability engineer, but I was reading work orders line by line and doing manual classification. And so, yeah, that was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'd be amazed even now, however many years on that is, before we start working with brands, that is often their kind of starting point and their baseline workflow, where someone on the team or many people on their team maybe one person is responsible for Amazon as a channel. They may literally be reading, copying, and pasting every Amazon review into a spreadsheet and then trying to tag it or classify it. And then the customer service team is doing that separately. Someone else is doing it for, being in charge of Target as a sales channel, et cetera. So yeah, it's quite a common workflow even today, which yeah is where we come in.
Amazing. Now, Alex, we got to ask you, right? So, what led you from graduation 15 years ago all the way to co-founding Sourcerie?
Yeah, it's been a winding road, I will say. Every step along the way, each new step wasn't necessarily obvious at the time, although now I feel like it's all coming together into a cohesive picture in hindsight. So when I graduated, I moved to New York, got a job in finance, as many of us did in that kind of 2010 cohort. So I joined the FX team at Credit Suisse, which was exciting for the first few months. I hadn't done much finance or economics at MIT, so there was a lot for me to learn up front. But that learning quickly waned. And I found myself really missing the engineering mindset, the problem solving mindset. And I missed being surrounded by technical or technically minded people. And around that time, I'd been at Credit Suisse for just over a year, maybe 18 months. And around that time, this company called Palantir reached out to me. At the time, it wasn't super well known. Many, maybe even most people hadn't heard of it. And I knew one person there, a good friend and actually fellow 2010, Kai Gogwilt. And he and I had done the Cambridge MIT exchange program together. And I knew that he loved it at Palantir. So I was like, all right, I'll give this company nobody's ever heard of a shot. So I joined the Palantir New York office in 2012, and I was one of the first people to work on their non-government projects. So commercial projects with financial institutions, insurance companies, et cetera, and spent a few years kind of expanding that part of the business across the US, and then moved over to London with Palantir. After 4 years in New York, I had been kind of ready for a change in scenery, and I'd fallen in love with London actually during my Cambridge MIT exchange year and was really to return. So moved to London in 2014. I've been here ever since, which is wild. It's the longest I've stayed put in one place ever in my life. So yeah, it essentially helps to continue to expand the Palantir commercial business across Europe and the UK. And then after nearly 6 years at Palantir, I knew it was time to leave, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do next. I'd kind of fallen into enterprise data integration and analytics software by accident, but I wasn't really sure that that's where I wanted to stay for my full career. The kind of big unknown to me that I was really curious about was the consumer space. I'd never worked in consumer. My whole career up until this point had been in enterprise. And when I thought about the consumer products that I loved, one really came to mind, a direct-to-consumer personalized hair care brand called Function of Beauty, founded by MIT founders. And I knew one of them quite well, Zahir Jassa, from my time at MIT. And I'd been kind of a very early consumer of their product. I was obsessed with the product. I was at the time interofficing it from the Palantir New York office to the Palantir London office because they didn't ship internationally. And so I was like, okay, I'm obsessed. I'm sure there's an opportunity for this product in the UK market. I wanted to keep living in the UK. And so I called Zahir and I said, hey, I think there's an opportunity for Function of Beauty to expand internationally, and I want to do that for you. Now, I had zero experience doing any of this in the consumer space, doing international expansion for consumer businesses, but Zahir was really, luckily for me, indexed on hiring smart people and letting them figure it out. So I joined Function of Beauty to spearhead all of their international expansion. And it was an incredibly wild ride. In 18 months, we grew the business from single digit millions in annual revenue in the US only to over 50 million run rate, with over 30% of that coming from international. And then we had a really lean team. So I was a one-woman international expansion team, which was incredibly exciting, and a massive kind of growth and learning trajectory. Really, I taught myself everything I needed to know there. We were one of the first pioneers of what international expansion for a US direct to consumer business really looks like. There wasn't a pre-existing playbook that you could follow. And I really gathered what I needed to know from dozens of different experts. An EU regulation expert, a Canada tax expert. Like generally, there were people who were experts in one vertical and in one market. And I needed to figure it out for every market and every vertical. And so I essentially, over time, gathered this and created my own playbook that we then rolled out across roughly 30 new countries in those 18 months of Function of Beauty. And kind of after and while doing this, other brands in the direct to consumer space started reaching out to me saying, I want to do what Function of Beauty has done. Where are the other people like you? I want to hire someone like you. Do you know anyone? And I didn't know anyone. I didn't really know anyone else who was doing what I was doing at Function of Beauty. And so this became a really natural progression for me to go on to then found Global, which was my first business. And Global started off as a consultancy to help direct to consumer brands expand internationally. So kind of square in that need of the expertise that I had built over the last few years. And what's great about a consultancy is that it makes money from day one. You don't need to fundraise. It's highly profitable. The downside of that is that it doesn't scale with anything other than the human hours that you put towards it. And having spent prior to Function of Beauty such a long time in software development, I was constantly hunting for the thing to productize. What is the thing that is going to enable me to scale this business beyond the hours that we spend on it? And so the thing to productize actually started off as an experiment, a favor to one of my consulting clients who needed better international shipping rates. This was a kind of common barrier to international growth for direct-to-consumer brands that I was seeing across the portfolio of global clients. I had relationships with international shippers from my time at Function of Beauty. Most of my friends were software engineers. And so I bought some beer and pizza, invited them over for a weekend, and we kind of like hacked out a first version of a centralized shipping integration platform. I remember the first time we shipped a few hundred actual orders on behalf of an actual brand delivering to their actual customers internationally. I was so nervous because there was, a person in a van going to collect these things that had labels on them that our software had generated. And we were just kind of like flying by the seat of our pants. It was pretty cowboy. And that business then kind of pretty amazingly organically grew to ship over 1 million orders a year at its peak. So my experiment kind of unintentionally grew into a pretty substantial shipping business. And that then kind of brings me forward to now and Sourcerie. So I founded Sourcerie in 2022. And as I mentioned, I feel like it's finally brought together my kind of at times seemingly disparate career path choices. It's finally all coming together and making sense. My love of consumer, my love of building tech, my love of data and analytics. And, kind of when I look back at my career in the last 15 years, even at Sourcerie, so I have some kind of fellow MIT classmates involved as angels or introducing us to prospective customers. I've basically gone from big corporate to smaller and smaller companies all the way to creating my own from scratch. But my connection to MIT has really been a presence throughout that journey when I look back on it. So, yeah, an exciting and wild ride.
It's pretty amazing. And Alex, I mean, you mentioned on our pre-call that Sourcerie has pivoted from B2C to B2B. Can you tell us a little bit about like what led you to making that pivot, and then just how's that pivot gone, or like what have you learned along the way?
Absolutely. Yeah, pivoting businesses is something I kind of love talking about. Would be very happy to talk to anyone who is thinking about pivoting their business or who has done it and has a shared experience. So yes, when we founded Sourcerie, it was a B2C marketplace. It really came out of actually a personal need. So my co-founder, Kristen, and I had originally bonded over a shared experience of having really severe eczema. Hers had come out of kind of COVID and some of the changes in her life. Mine had come out of a severe allergic reaction traveling to the Far East. And we really struggled to find products that would work for us, and then found that the best recommendations for the products that we ended up enjoying most came from each other. from someone who had a shared experience, a shared need, a shared profile, if you will. And so that really became the basis and founding thesis of the Sourcerie B2C platform, which was a personalized marketplace connecting individuals with products that were the best for them or right for them based on the experience of people who were most like them. And you can kind of start to see the parallels of the underlying data, really, and the underlying infrastructure that we built for that. That is now incredibly valuable and has been repurposed for the B2B version of Sourcerie, because it really all relies on classification of unstructured data. So, pull out profiles and personas and characteristics that people are talking about across things like product reviews. And then in the B2C marketplace version of that, a new individual would join the platform, create their own profile, and would be algorithmically matched to products that were right for them based on the feedback from thousands of other people who shared their profile or who were most closely related to their profile. So started off with that back in 2022. And a lot changed in the kind of landscape between then and when we ultimately decided to pivot to be some of the kind of most successful and famous marketplaces that had done really, really well started not doing really, really well, like the Farfetches of the world. A lot of changes in how advertising and targeting was working made that more challenging. So things like being able to serve targeted search terms. When we first started off, that was kind of a core tenet of how the business would work. If somebody would Google best cleanser for eczema, we could very directly serve that search with very specific results. But changes in the advertising landscape meant that that was not as possible and so much more expensive. So kind of lots of confluences came together to make the marketplace model and marketplace models, we knew this from the beginning, already are not starting with wonderful unit economics. So everything else really has to work for it to work and be profitable long term. And so all of that was happening. And then simultaneously, we had onboarded brands as suppliers of the marketplace. So we already had relationships with dozens of different brands. The marketplace was really focused on kind of beauty and wellness. So we had relationships with loads of these brands because we were recommending and selling their products through our marketplace. And they started coming to us saying, hey, all that cool tech that you've built for yourselves and for your own site, can I buy that from you and use it myself to better understand my customers and to better serve my customers? And so it was kind of this simultaneous push and pull between the B2C business model and the B2B business model, where we were getting all of these signals that B2B potentially would be gaining more interest, would potentially be more profitable as a business model, et cetera. So we spent kind of the second half of 2023 prototyping lots of different possible manifestations of our existing tech in a B2B proposition or a B2B model. So we tried out 3 different things, ran a bunch of pilots, and then at the end of 2023, essentially picked the one that was most promising and that was seeing the best traction. Made the hard pivot to B2B kind of end of 2023, beginning of 2024. So yeah, now it's been just over a year since we've been developing and selling our kind of current B2B proposition and product. And it's going really, really well. So for a lot of last year, once we picked this kind of focused direction of which product and offering made the most sense, we again did lots of prototyping, lots of building, and then at the end of last year, so in Q4, essentially rebuilt everything from scratch and launched what we call 2.0 version of our platform at the beginning of this year, which has gone amazingly well. So we've migrated all of our old customers over to the new platform. We had our first kind of cycle of annual renewals, and simultaneously pretty much doubled the business between the end of 2024 and now. So it's been a lot going on simultaneously, massive growth trajectory, but it's going really well. Yeah, it's nice as we kind of spoke about a bit when we last talked. It's nice when you finally truly, without question, have that feeling of this is really working. This is what it feels like when it's really working.
When you were at MIT, did you feel like you were the only one who didn't belong? Do you compare yourself with successful classmates? Do you feel like you're constantly needing to do more to feel like you're enough? Many of us feel that. I felt it too, but you don't have to feel that way anymore. You can get better results, achieve more, and feel more fulfilled doing it. I can say that because I've done it, and I coach my clients to do it too. I use scientifically proven methods, including internal family systems, values-based leadership, and habit-building techniques to transform your psychology and your life. These trusted strategies will get you results quickly, in some cases, even in our first session, and they'll last you for years. Now, my coach isn't just about learning. It's about taking action and creating results. Results that'll boost your confidence, unlock doors to opportunities you never thought possible, and equip you with strategies that only a select few ever master. But here's the thing, the longer you wait, the more opportunities slip by. Imagine what your life could look like just weeks from now. Having taken the first step, take action now. Go to robkalwarowsky.com and book a complimentary call with me.
So yeah, we have that feeling now, and it's a really exciting time.
Alex, what are some of your top learnings that you've learned along the way?
Good question. There are a lot. I think one of the early learnings for me as a founder, really, and I think Kristen, my co-founder, would share this as well. There are so many things when you're starting a business. Pretty much everything is new. You're doing everything for the first time. And there are some areas more than others where we, at least, and this seems to be reasonably common, had the tendency to think that's something that really requires expertise that I can't figure out from scratch, and that I should hire someone who has expertise to do from the very beginning. So for me personally, this was product, the whole landscape of what that means. And I remembered from my time at Palantir and just kind of other environments, the way that people had talked about product was that it was this mystical, magical thing that nobody really knew how to do. It was really hard to do well. Nobody knew anyone who did it well. And nobody could describe what doing it well looked like or meant. Nobody could explain to you how to learn to do it well. So it was this really kind of nebulous, scary thing. And so I looked at that and thought, well, of all the things that I have to learn and figure out and do from scratch, which I'm really excited about, that one I have to hire for. And so we did from the very beginning. And of course, you read all the Medium posts and you read all of the, learnings from founders, and every single one of them says about product, and this is true for a couple of other kind of domains and roles as well, don't hire too early. Founders should be doing this from the very beginning. And it's one of those examples where we just had to do it to find out. You read all the things and you're like, yeah. And then you do it and you realize, oh, well, yeah, now I can write my own Medium post that says the same thing as the one I read at the beginning. So yeah, that was really the one for me of, you'll be surprised at what things, especially as a founder, because as the founders, you are the people who have the most 360 view. You're the people who have the most context, the deepest understanding of the vision, the full understanding of team and capabilities and runway, and what are the absolute must-haves that you have to hit, and all of the other constraints and opportunities that lie ahead of you. And all of those things are part of what make the product role function really well and successfully. And it's incredibly difficult to impart that on someone, irrespective of who they are and what their experience is. And so really doing it yourself is the best way in the beginning. And for my counterpart, my co-founder, Kristen, she's been doing sales. So we've done, founder-led sales. I think that's really the one for her, right? It's sales is another one where it's like, well, I've never done that. I don't know how to do that. I'll hire for that. But it is another one where it's really best to do it yourselves for a long time, probably longer than you think. So yeah, that's been a big one for me.
It's that transition, like when you're talking about all the things that that to me is also reads CEO. right? And so, I mean, obviously, likely you would be the CEO of a company you founded, right? But it's like up to a certain point, that's where you need to be. And then there's like that. I mean, obviously, the thinking needs to progress and change, but a lot of that stuff is still the same, like understanding runway, understanding strategy. What's the goal of the brand? What's the vision? How do we get there? Those things are always constant, and it always starts with you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Alex, of course, we have to ask you our big questions here. What's your biggest goal at the moment?
2025, it started off really well, so it's going to be a big year for us. It's really about significant growth, which means a few things. Boils down to hiring new team members, signing new customers, and probably raising our next funding round. So yeah, those are, I mean, that's probably enough to have on the list of goals for this year. From a hiring perspective in particular, I kind of just alluded to it. We're hiring our first salesperson imminently, which is an exciting hire. Uh, Transitioning from founder led to not exclusively founder led is a significant transition. So an exciting one. But yeah, we've got we've got big goals for this year. I think Q1 was really good, and I said to the team, the only downside of having such an amazing Q1 is that it's harder to beat than in Q2. So we're doing pretty well so far. But yeah, you're always kind of in a race against yourself of beating your prior achievements as a business. But yeah, good problems to have.
You felt a little nervous about saying those things. Like what's going on with where is that coming from?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. The thing I think, well, hiring a good salesperson, I think, is the thing that is most frightening, which kind of relates back to the thing that I was talking about being kind of our biggest learning as founders, or one of our biggest learnings as founders to date, which is you come to realize that doing it yourself is actually the best way. And shortly after coming to terms with that, you then realize you do indeed have to hire someone to scale it. So it's quite a seesaw, it's quite a roller coaster of don't hire someone too soon, do it yourself, really deeply understand what's needed and what it takes. And also just the business is evolving so fast. So the job that it was even a quarter ago is a different job than the job that it is today. And it's easier to roll with that evolution as a founder or even someone who's already on the existing team. I mean, pretty much our entire existing team has been with us for a really long time now. They're kind of the OG crew, which also makes hiring hard. We're such a tight-knit team. We work so well together. We're so collaborative, and finding someone who can do the job, do the evolution that the job is going to require, and fit in with the team and with the culture, it's a pretty tall order. I think it's going to be challenging, but I'm sure the right person is out there.
This is the part of scaling, right? Is your team at 50 or 100 or 200 or however big you want to go, it's going to look vastly different.
Mm.
Now, you really still want to maintain and codify, and more than just codify, but just like really make sure that the values that you have as a company and as a founder are still being things that are done, right? And a lot of folks have this problem is like when we were 10 people, one is everybody knew everything. We didn't really have process, procedure. We all were in line. Everything was good. When you're 50 or 100, when you're hiring that 79th person needs to be onboarded, but then there also needs to be those practices that are maintaining the values and that culture. And so like a lot of, like I come from mining and heavy industry, and literally every company, one of their values is safety. And so how it used to get codified was every meeting, we would start off with 5 minutes of a safety moment. So the person running the meeting would share something about how they behaved safe or a safety tip or something like that. And then that becomes just and it's weird because when I was new, I thought it was stupid because we worked in an office. And like, yeah, I'd go to the mines, once, twice a week, right? But it was like, I was like, oh, this is kind of dumb. But then it's weird because now, like when I walk around in the world and I see people doing construction or doing things, I'm like, don't do that. That's unsafe. It's like literally in my brain. So it's just something where, yeah, but that's part of the scaling process, right? And
Yeah.
it's not nothing to be nervous about. It's just that's growth.
Yeah. No, totally. And that, I mean, the things you're really talking about are like values and culture. And it was something Palantir did incredibly well from the very, very beginning. It's since then always been so obvious to me, having seen other businesses, even just observed other businesses, that you don't get that for free. You really have to invest in it, right? Culture and values, those things aren't going to happen organically. Well, they will if you let them, but not necessarily the culture and the values that you want. And so you do have to be proactive and think about it and action it kind of on a day to day, week to week basis from the very beginning, even when it seems overkill and you're five people sitting in a room, because that's where it starts. And it's really, really hard, if not impossible, to retrofit.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll just note on this is values do not just put words on a wall like trust and integrity and we work hard, like great. But the companies that have the most effective values are the ones that help people make decisions.
Mm.
So there's a company, Upkeep, one of theirs is customers over profit. And so it's when they're thinking, when they get a call from support or, they're talking with a customer, they're always thinking like, okay, how can I help this person? Even if, maybe it costs me a little bit more or I make a little bit less money, I still want to make their experience better. And so it's like having, like it can be one word, but then it needs to have some sort of descriptor that tells people like, what is the behavior that we want you to make when nobody else is watching?
Yeah. The other thing that I really like that we've incorporated as well, it made the rounds maybe 5+ years ago, was this post about anti values. Because it's easy to write down a bunch of things that every company would want, that every group of people would want. I'm sure we can all think of things that it would be like, well, what company wouldn't have that as their set of values? And the concept behind anti values was the idea of, you know, your values should be things that maybe are not things that everyone would want. They come with a compromise, they come with a trade off. So the one that you just described is a perfect example of this, right? You're trading off stability for putting your customers first. It's an active choice. And some companies may very well have the value of profitability comes first. It's not that one is good and one is bad, and you can actually see one and the other being the appropriate value for different businesses. So having that in the back of your mind as you think of values, this kind of anti-values concept, I've found really helpful as well, because otherwise you just end up writing down a list of nice things that everyone wants rather than thinking critically about what are the things that are going to help us make decisions when the decisions are tough, specifically and particularly when the decisions are tough, when there's a trade-off to be made.
That's 100% right. And actually another great facilitator trick, right? Is when I do group facilitations, sometimes in brainstorming, if we're struggling to come up with new ideas, it's flip the question and go, how would you design a system to fail at this task
Yeah.
in the most catastrophic way? And then that becomes really easy for folks to define. And then it's like, okay, well, where are we doing this, or where are elements that are happening? And then just flip it back, right? So it's just another pro tip out there for folks.
Yeah, totally.
So, Alex, of course, you're scaling, you're hiring, you're growing. How can the rest of the MIT 2010s help you?
Yeah, well, I think the ask is pretty succinct on each of the things that we're looking for this year that, you know, are my and our goals for 2025. First is, if you are, or if you know a B2B SaaS salesperson who would be a great fit for a first sales hire, particularly for the UK market, please come to me. I really do want to meet you or to meet these people. The second is growing customers. So again, if you or if anyone you know works at or owns or runs or is familiar with a consumer products brand company in the kind of FMCG, wellness, home, or similar spaces, generally physical consumer goods, who are, looking to put their own consumer feedback at the heart of their decision making, which is probably most brands in any of those spaces today. I'd love to be connected with them. And then further on down the future, but fundraising. So if you are, or if you know any investors who are interested in the AI powered e-commerce enablement and acceleration space, that would be a really interesting and valuable connection as well.
I know we have we definitely have a few VCs that listen to the show who've been on Jason Scott's one.
He's one of our angels, actually.
Shortly. So we definitely have a few of those in our class. So definitely for folks out there, for sure, reach out to Alex. I've dropped her LinkedIn in the podcast notes as well. And then obviously you can check her out, Sourcerie. Alex, would you like to leave our audience with any words of wisdom?
Words of wisdom. Well, I will say that in terms of how I'd love to help or give back or even just share with other fellow MIT students, I'm really keen and happy to share about my experience, learnings, mistakes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, about anything kind of personal or professional. So whether you're doing a big geographic move, thinking about moving your life to a totally different country, potentially forever, which is how it's worked out for me so far. And especially if anyone's curious about the UK or London, or even just coming to visit the UK or London, I'd love to catch up or share a list of recommendations or be helpful in any way that I can. But also, obviously, on the business side, anything and everything that comes with founding or running businesses in the early stages, fundraising, hiring, all of these things, or even just the kind of trajectory and journey from, as I talked about, I went basically from big corporate all the way down to now I run businesses. Earlier on in that time, I was certainly the person who said, I'll never found a business. That's not for me. I remember watching my then boyfriend, now husband, doing his own startup while I was still at Palantir. And I thought, no, I'll never do that. I maybe join a small startup and, be the number two or be the right hand to the founders, but nah, founder isn't for me. And so that kind of organically changed for me in a way that was unexpected. So if anyone feels like they are in that space or maybe in that space, I'm really happy to chat about that as well.
It's funny you say that. Like, I had the same journey, like companies of 10,000, and then worked my way down to, I was like a 10-person company, and now I'm a company of one. So
Exactly.
definitely it's been fun.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, it's, I think some people know they want to do that from the very beginning and do it from the very beginning. And they know that that's them, that's the person they are. And it was very different for me. It kind of happened to me. And now I can't imagine being anything else. I can't imagine, getting a normal job again. I think no matter how large Sourcerie becomes, my parents will never think that it's like a normal job or a real job. So yeah, no, it's been a really interesting and enlightening journey for me to kind of figure out who I am and what I want and what's important to me. So yeah, really happy to share that with anyone who might find it helpful.
Amazing, folks. So Alex's LinkedIn is in the podcast notes, of course, sourcerie.co. And if you know any businesses that want to better utilize their data to help their customers and or investors and or folks that would be interesting to be good hires for Alex, definitely send them her way. And then obviously for me, if you know any folks who are looking for speakers for their corporate events, whether that's at your company or somebody else or just conferences in general, send them my way. And also, of course, I do entrepreneur and executive coaching one-on-one as well. And that's robkalwarowsky.com. That's also in the podcast notes. And I would love any referrals there. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rob. And I have to say, having seen my other fellow 2010s that you've had on the podcast so far, I'm pretty honored to be amongst them. Thanks so much. It's been a really nice conversation. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you in just a few weeks.
It's going to be fun, folks. We'll see you all in a couple weeks, and then, of course, we'll have another show for you next week. And yeah, see you soon.